on our special show, The Interview, is former Foreign Secretary, a career diplomat, Ambassador Harsh Shringla, who's also been the High Commissioner to Bangladesh, and many would say perhaps he's the best person to put this into perspective and help you understand as to what is behind these protests. Thank you very much, Ambassador Shringla, for joining us on this broadcast. Let me straight away begin by asking you, is there much more than what meets the eye right now? Because many would say that while student protests have always taken place in Bangladesh, it has got a rich history dating back to 1952, starting with the Bhasha Andolan. But we'll have to look at it in the context of the changing situation in Bangladesh. I want to start by asking you your assessment of the current situation.
Thank you for having me on your show, Shavon. You're right in saying that students have always been a sort of sensitive index, a barometer of public opinion in Bangladesh right from the early days. I recall that when I was there in 2018, students had come out on the streets to protest traffic accidents and the lack of observance of traffic rules. And clearly that was a big issue then, and students had a real reason to come out. And similarly, the quota issue is something that a lot of young people in Bangladesh are concerned about, because quotas were instituted in 1972 after Bangladesh gained its independence, essentially to provide for the descendants, the children and descendants of freedom fighters, something similar to what we did after 1947, when there were various facilities for descendants of freedom fighters. But 53 years after Bangladesh's independence, a lot of young people are saying that is it necessary to have such high levels of reservations for government jobs, especially at a time when the economy is not doing so well. So there are underlying factors to all of this. And we all know that Bangladesh reserves 56% of all seats in government for various categories. 30% for descendants of freedom fighters, 10% for backward districts, 10% for women, 5% for ethnic minorities, and 1% for physically challenged people. And so from that perspective, students are saying we want a more level playing field now, and this quota system has to be done away with. And those agitations that took place earlier this year, last year actually, government had actually conceded the point. Government had agreed that these quotas should be done away with, and took a decision to that effect and conveyed that to the students. But certain freedom fighters went to the courts, and the High Court stayed that order. So what government is saying is that, look, this is a matter which is sub judice. Sheikh Hasina herself came on television to address the nation, and she said, look, we are with you in this whole business, but until the court pronounces on this issue, government, the executive, is really not in a position to act on it. But what we will try and do is to get that decision as early as possible. And I also heard that the Bangladesh government had asked the courts to bring the decision out as early as tomorrow, that's Sunday, which is a working day in Bangladesh. So from that perspective, I think you have a government that is trying to reach out, that's trying to engage on the genuine demands of the students, have also offered a dialogue. But what we've seen over the last day or two is that the movement has taken a political turn. The opposition Bangladesh National Party, the BNP, has got involved in this business. And this is strange because, the BNP did not agree to participate in the last two general elections. So they have not been a participant in the democratic process. But they're, obviously ready to go out in the streets and fish in troubled waters. So they are there. You also have the Jamaat-e-Islami, which is associated with the pro-Pakistan, movement during the 1971 freedom struggle. And their youth wing, the Chhatro Shibir, is also part of this movement now. And of course, you also have those elements, especially the pro-Pakistan element that is very unhappy with the government of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina for having gone after them hammer and tongs. There's a very significant sentiment in Bangladesh that those who perpetrated genocide in 1971, responsible for a very large number of deaths of people, a rape of a very large number of women at that time, should have been brought to justice, and there was a very strong call for retributive justice, and Sheikh Hasina responded to that because she herself is a victim of that movement, and she herself, I think, felt that there was a strong sentiment that very major violators of human rights in 1971 should be brought to book, and a number of people, whether it is the Jamaat-e-Islami is the president of the Jamaat-e-Islami, or people who were involved in heinous crimes, war crimes in 1971, were actually brought to the gallows and executed after a court war crimes trial took place. So these elements are very, very strongly, I think, opposed to Sheikh Hasina for what she's done, and I'm not surprised that there are reports that Pakistan's ISI is also dabbling in in this movement, and some support is being given to them to be able to take that movement forward in an anti-government perspective.
That's an interesting point that you make, because with regards to the Pakistani ISI's alleged involvement, and also the role that the BNP plays. For our viewers to understand this, BNP is the same very party which decided not to participate in the elections, as you highlighted. I also want to bring in the focus on what the BNP essentially did just before the elections that were held in Bangladesh, knocking at the doors of the Joe Biden administration, hoping that there would be some sort of a US intervention really taking place. Hence, the focus on foreign intervention, alleged foreign intervention in the current protests. I want you to help our viewers to understand why the BNP is more of a threat, a concern at this point in time, because they would largely benefit from an unstable Bangladesh at this point in time.
Well, we have to first understand where the BNP is coming from, because if you saw that when they were in government, and Khaleda Zia was in government from 2001 to 2006, they had actually openly encouraged anti-India insurgencies and terrorist groups to operate out of Bangladesh. These safe havens that were offered and the support that the BNP government offered them enabled them to wreak havoc in our northeast and parts of India bordering Bangladesh. And I think support to terrorism, support to insurgencies is part of their makeup. And if you look at the fact that they not only refuse to participate in 2 general elections, but are always willing to come out to the streets to indulge in arson and violence, I think it is a characteristic that you can see from 2008, 2014, and possibly in 2019 also. And of course, their main leader, who's Tariq Zia, who's the son of Khaleda Zia, lives in London. So he's sitting in London, but he controls the party. He instructs the party on what to do with regard to the actions on the ground. And it is not surprising that they are supported by some very, very significant lobby groups, which I think are supported not just from Bangladesh, from elsewhere as well, from agencies that are elsewhere. And these lobby groups openly lobby the UK, the US, and other governments on the behalf of the BNP and the Jamaat, and of course try and bring as much pressure they can bear on Bangladesh. But our view has always been that you must participate in democratic elections in order to make that difference. I mean, not participating in elections, indulging in violence and arson, taking your issue to third countries and other elements that are outside your country is not conducive to democracy and the functioning of democracy in Bangladesh.
Ambassador Shringla, because there is a growing concern of foreign intervention. The reason being of what Sheikh Hasina just a few days ago had to also say, because, and I'm quoting this, she says this was something that she had told the alliance leaders, that there is a plot to carve out a Christian state like East Timor. And during the January 7th polls, Sheikh Hasina had alleged that a white man had offered her a hassle-free re-election in the 7th January polls, provided she allowed a foreign country to establish an airbase in Bangladesh territory. That's the reason why many would be worried at this point in time as to what's really happening in Bangladesh, and can we really ignore the possibility of a foreign hand?
Well, I cannot comment on what is seen as speculation, but I think it is clear that obviously the country is subject to pulls and pressures from outside, and Chinese influence has grown dramatically within Bangladesh. They have not only extended loans to Bangladesh, but also in a certain sense, I think there is always the risk of Bangladesh going the Sri Lanka way because of an over dependence on those loans. The link between China and the Bangladesh army also is a matter of concern. And I think Bangladesh, it's important that Bangladesh maintains its territorial integrity and sovereignty, and that for us, Bangladesh has to be a partner country with whom we have strong people-to-people connect. We certainly want Bangladesh to be a peaceful and stable neighbor, and we don't want to see a great power rivalry in Bangladesh. We want to see Bangladesh free of those pulls and pressures, but those can't be wished away, and with an increasing Chinese involvement in Bangladesh, it is bound to give rise to other interests coming in, and I think it's important for Bangladesh to have a balanced policy where they are not tilting too much to one side or the other, and that I think is very important, considering that there have been attempts on the Chinese side to have a preponderant role in Bangladesh, through loans, through grants, through essentially a policy of that lacks transparency, a policy that I think to my mind would lead to indebtedness, also a garnering of resources, whether it is the question of ports, providing defense equipment, having submarines, supporting submarine bases. All of this is a matter of concern. And once you start pandering to those interests or allowing those interests to come up, I think you will automatically invite a certain level of trade power rivalry, because there will be an attempt at balance. And so I think it is a salutary lesson that you should not be too preponderantly engaged with any party that seeks to bring a certain level of militarization, a certain level of vested interests into the country that is ultimately not in your long-term interests. I mean, India has always pursued a policy that is based on mutual respect for their sovereignty, and of course everything that we do has to be of mutual benefit. So whatever we do has to benefit both Bangladesh and India, and vice versa. And that policy over the last 15 years has held us in very good stead. And over the last 10 years, I think we have achieved more with Bangladesh than we have achieved in the last 35 years of its existence. So when Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina referred to the relationship as a Shonali Adhyay, I think it is a reflection of the sort of progress that we have made and the tremendous gains that have been to the benefit of people of both our countries. Bangladesh has ensured that no terrorist activity, no radicalism, no insurgencies from their territory can impact on India. And in our turn, we have ensured that we have provided very, very concessional loans and grants to Bangladesh. We have looked at every way of supporting Bangladesh in its developmental journey. And from that perspective, I think the two countries have come a long way. And the people of both our countries have benefited greatly. But that is a relationship that is unique. And we don't want a great power interest to come in. We don't want a, sort of a great power rivalry in our immediate backyard.
Ambassador Shringla, since you make a mention of China, and this is something that, while one would say, is it some sort of a speculation or not, but one can't really brush aside the fact that there is a sequence of events. On 8th of July, you've had Sheikh Hasina visiting China, and look at the developments that took place. The meeting that lasted with the Chinese President Xi Jinping was less than about 30 minutes. No minister called on Sheikh Hasina. She was supposed to talk about the $5 billion loan from China. There's no word on that. And given the fact that many had touted, particularly the Western media, as a failed trip of Sheikh Hasina to China, and just about a following week later, you see the kind of protests that are taking place on the streets of Dhaka. Is there any sort of correlation?
Well, let me narrate a small story on which is very much relevant to what you're saying. In 2017, when I was High Commissioner in Bangladesh, just before Sheikh Hasina landed on a state visit to India, I was at the airport and I was surprised to see that the Prime Minister drove up. And this is a surprise because this was not part of the protocol. But Prime Minister himself came to the airport. He received Sheikh Hasina. And this is one of the first times that the Prime Minister had done that. He had only done that for President Obama and the UAE Crown Prince at that time. And I think the impact it created on Sheikh Hasina, the Bangladesh delegation with her, and the entire country was electrifying. Now, contrast it with what happened when Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina went to China, and the reports we hear was that Xi Jinping said that basically deal with our Prime Minister. As you say, he gave half an hour of cursory attention. I think even at the level of the Prime Minister, the attention was not what Bangladesh expected. Bangladesh is a sovereign country. They are sensitive about these matters, and it does make a difference when you're treated like a junior partner rather casually. And this is the contrast between our handling, and we always treat Bangladesh as an equal partner. We have always looked at Bangladesh as a friend, and I think we have never tried to use our preponderance in terms of size, our economy, etc., in any manner that is detrimental to Bangladesh, when we have any engagement with them. So I think it is something that did impact adversely on the Bangladesh psyche. I don't think people in that country liked the way their leader was treated, because at the end of the day she represents the country. And clearly that has had an impact in terms of what Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina also said. She said that the Tista project is something that she would prefer that India takes up and not China. So essentially, that and the linkage with the fallout in what is happening is circumstantial. I cannot comment on that, but nothing can be ruled out in today's days of real politics and interference that countries habitually do in other countries' affairs, especially when there is an opportunity to, as I said, get involved in muddied waters.
Ambassador Shringla, since you make a mention of the Tista restoration project, which is a $1 billion project, and Sheikh Hasina, very uncharacteristic of a head of the state to essentially say something like, China is ready, but I want India to do the project. China's made us an offer to us. They did a feasibility study. India's also made an offer. We'll do a feasibility study. She's essentially seen as giving a larger priority to India at this point in time. Do you believe the kind of statements that Sheikh Hasina has made in favor of India, something that has irked the Chinese, and it could have its own ramifications? So how do you really look at it? Because this is a critical project as far as India is concerned. India's geopolitical standpoint on this entire matter makes it very, very clear that the proximity between India and Bangladesh becomes abundantly clear from this very project.
So as I said, it is, clearly this is from Bangladesh's perspective an important project. It involves development of the Tista basin downstream of Ghazaldoba and Dalia, which are the 2 points that the Tista crosses the international border into Bangladesh. And the fact that the Prime Minister of Bangladesh has indicated a preference for India to do it tells its own story. So as I said, everything is circumstantial, and you can only infer from comments and from various press reports that you see. But clearly, I think there is a preference, and there's a recognition of India's, I would say, very, very positive, friendly approach to Bangladesh, and respectful approach to Bangladesh, and in contrast, I think there is a certain sense that the Chinese have not really reciprocated in the manner that Bangladesh would have wanted. So you can only draw inferences. I mean, I cannot say with any level of certainty that there is a link between the two. But clearly, coming back from China, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina indicating a preference for India to do this project says a lot for the relationship that our two countries enjoy today. And our two Prime Ministers. The connect between the two Prime Ministers is also very important, and I know that Prime Minister Modi has an excellent relationship with Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, and that really matters in interstate relations.
Ambassador Shringla, Many say in the circles here in the national capital that you've had a rich experience in Bangladesh. So there would be many stories, untold stories of your days in Bangladesh, your experience with the Prime Minister in Bangladesh. What is it that you can tell our viewers in terms of the personal relationship that Sheikh Hasina has shared with Indian leaders? A story that you would like to tell us?
Well, some stories are best left untold. But the fact of the matter is that I have seen a very strong chemistry between Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. When Prime Minister Modi visited Bangladesh for their 50th anniversary, when he was the chief guest at that event in 2021, he made it a point to visit Tungipada, which is the birthplace of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman and the family. It's like a very revered spot for the family of Sheikh Hasina, and there the entire immediate family, I mean Sheikh Hasina, her cousins, their children, her sister Rehana, the entire sort of close knit family, which are descendants of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, were in that small room in Tungipada, and Prime Minister Modi was there. I happened to be there, and it was a very warm and convivial, I mean, like a familial sort of get-together, and I think that exemplifies in many senses the relationship not only between our two countries but between the two leaders. And of course, Prime Minister Modi, as I said, he made that exceptional gesture of going to the airport to receive Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. I mean, you've seen so many international visits taking place. Where do you see heads of state, government actually going themselves to the airport? No protocol calls for it. But here was Prime Minister Modi, who was at the airport in 2017. He received Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina personally. There were about 250 people who came out of that aircraft, part of a delegation, and everyone absolutely wanted a selfie with Prime Minister Modi, and he was patient enough to take selfies with each and every of the delegates, and I think it had a huge impact. As I said, I mean, these are gestures that really matter to the people of Bangladesh, and I think those are the gestures that Prime Minister Modi exhibited, and it is an indication of the manner in which he regarded his relationship with his counterpart and with that country.
Ambassador Shringla, I would like to end the interview just to get an understanding of what lies ahead. Should India be worried about the current situation in Bangladesh?
So if you see the student protests, I think there are some underlying factors that are there. Although ostensibly the reason is linked to the quota, but that is only the tip of the concerns that are there. COVID-19 and the Ukraine conflict that followed has been very hard for Bangladesh. I think it extracted a huge price in terms of the rising cost of fuel, food and fertilizers that Bangladesh imports. At the same time, remittances decreased. The demand for garments and other goods that Bangladesh exports to the West also fell. So their foreign exchange reserves dipped. Inflation has been at very high rates, and all of this impacts on the common man. So all of this is now, in some senses coming up to the surface. And those underlying factors need to be addressed. I mean, peace and stability in Bangladesh also depends on continued growth, development, and a certain sense at the public level that they are moving forward, and that they are looking at a better future. I mean, I can only say that I can't overemphasize the fact that a peaceful, stable and prosperous Bangladesh is in our very, very strong interest, because anything to the contrary will lead to instability on our borders, on our northeast, in West Bengal, and this is something that we cannot afford to have. And so stabilizing Bangladesh, assisting it in any manner in overcoming some of the larger challenges that beset the country is important. There are also allegations of corruption, misgovernance, certain elements within government who are preponderant. And I think all of these concerns are there at the public level. I'm only articulating what I read in the media, etc. And those also need to be addressed. You need to focus on a government that delivers, but is seen to be delivering with a certain level of efficiency, and that there are certain reforms that are necessary, because at the start of a 16th year in government, I think you do need to bring in reforms that would indicate that you're moving with the times and you're moving within the aspirations or meeting the aspirations of the people of Bangladesh, especially the youth who are out in the streets today.
Well, thank you very much, Ambassador Shringla, for taking out the time and speaking to us, putting this into perspective, because many would say that what led to these protests and whether at all there is a resolution in sight. Thank you very much.
In the India Today Best Universities 2023 survey, India's #1 ranked universities in various streams are JNU Delhi, Amity University, AIIMS Delhi, IIT Delhi, and National Law School Bengaluru.